Hi everyone and welcome to Terf Talk Downunder. My name's Angie and I'm here with Nerissa and Janet. Hi ladies.
Hello.
Hi. We're going to start this episode on a little bit of a somber note. I'd like to dedicate this episode of Terf Talk to our friend Brett. It was Brett's funeral today. Brett passed away a couple of weeks ago and he was a fierce activist and a good friend to a lot of us. He was quite prolific on Twitter. And we're all a little bit heartbroken that Brett isn't with us, and he was a big fan of this show even when we had like 5 followers. He used to watch it every week, and every time I'd put a post up and say, oh, there's a new episode of Terf Talk, Brett would share it. So yeah, I'd like to dedicate this episode to him and his family. So yeah, thank you. Okay, we'll kick it off with some news. Australia this week, the Tickle versus Giggle case is going forward. So a judge has decided that there is grounds to take Roxy Tickle's complaint about Sal Grover excluding him from her female-only app to the High Court. So that's interesting. We'll see how that pans out. We had a couple of politicians do some amazing maiden speeches this week. We had Moira Deeming in the Victorian Parliament. Look that one up. Very, very good. And we also had a Tasmanian a councillor called Louise Elliott who made her maiden speech at Hobart Council. And she had next to her another councillor, and his name was Ryan Posset, who sat there rolling his eyes and like being quite dramatic.
So professional.
Yes, and you can have a look for Louise Elliott's maiden speech on Twitter, and you can see this guy and what he's doing, but he got ratioed to hell on social media.
Yeah, and he's crying about it, isn't he?
Yes, he's just being so women, Louise is talking about the impact of self-ID on women, and this bloke's making it all about him. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, that's a bit of news. Same old with the ABC doubling down and just flooding us with pro-trans propaganda. Interestingly, not only have they flooded us with pride stuff, but they have shown that it's like a dramatization based on a real life event, and it's a TV show called Butterfly, and it's actually based on Susie Green of Mermaids, of her story where she got her son castrated at the age of 16 in Thailand. So this movie is based on her life. Now she's recently been disgraced and booted from Mermaids. She's had her TED talk taken down because she admits she got her son's penis cut off because her husband was homophobic and all sorts of things. But the ABC is showing this aimed at kids and teenagers. So,
I know, how out of touch are they?
Yeah. And we also had the Age actually was running a story this week about a trans-identified male got in a fist fight with someone at 3 a.m. or I think it was 2 trans-identified males and 2 normal blokes had a fist fight at 3 a.m. outside a nightclub this week, and that made the news. And of course, the trans-identified males were portrayed as victims, even though the full details of the case haven't really come forward. Now, a friend of ours was assaulted on a Melbourne street recently, pushed to the ground in the middle of the day and had her shoulder broken. I spoke to the Age about that, put him in touch with this person. They never ran the story.
I note that Redux has an article out about it now.
Redux did. Redux has run with it, and a lot of people are asking the Age why they didn't cover that story. And they've covered this one with the trans-identified men. So, more of the same.
When they covered Andy Meddick's son being involved in a contretemps where it seemed that he has assaulted someone, that story sank like a stone, didn't it?
Yeah.
And his Instagram got locked down as well. It had been quite disturbing, his Instagram.
And as it turns out, Andy Meddick's political career also sunk like a stone because he was elected for animal justice and he made his party all about trans rights activism. So may that be a lesson. Yeah. In other news, I had a personal victory this week. I had a rant on Twitter about the progress flag being flied outside my local council. And I said that it was racist to fly a flag representing furries, asexuals, diaper fetishists next to the national flags, particularly the national flags of colonised nations. And I tagged my council in it. And much to my surprise, the next day I drove past and the progress flag was down. So I'm all for them putting up the rainbow, the old school rainbow. And I even said that in the tweet. I thought, bring back the rainbow. But yeah, so, that just goes to show that, you've got to stand up to this stuff. You've got to, get out there and say to people, look, that's, what this flag really means, And I've noticed increasingly a lot of organisations that used to have all the flags together, like they'd have all the national flags and then they'd have the progress flag, have now separated them and they've got the national flags on one side and then all the sexuality flags on the other. So, I think maybe word's getting around that it's not acceptable. It's not okay to put that flag up everywhere.
Not in Sydney. Not in Sydney. No. In Sydney, you can see
everywhere at the moment.
Australian flag, Aboriginal flag, Torres Strait Islander flag. I can't say that word. The anti-progress flag.
Yeah, I was in Sydney over the weekend visiting family. Didn't realise that World Pride was on, Janet, and it's everywhere at the moment, isn't it? Can't miss it.
Yeah, and it's funny, in my head, I've separated the rainbow, which is like the gay flag, which is, and that to me is like, yay. And then I see the progress flag and I wince because I think of the other end of the acronym that flag represents. Yeah. And it just makes me but anyway. So I'm sure there's plenty of other news out there, but I'm trying to stick to there's what's happening local to us. And if anyone in throughout the week has any news stories for us, we've got a Facebook page. If you want to drop us a line on there that maybe we could mention them the following week, that'd be great.
There's been quite a few. There's been quite a few on TikTok as well. I'm not on TikTok, Ange. I don't know if you are, but there's been a few good news stories coming out of TikTok.
Yeah, the tide really seems to be turning. That's my feeling anyway, particularly among the younger ones. We're still seeing all the governments and companies all doubling down, but I think people are sort of waking up, hopefully.
I think I sometimes get the feeling when I see younger people kind of making fun of this stuff on Instagram or whatever, that they've become a little tired of the constant tiptoeing around and the demands for compliance. I have noticed occasionally pronouns aren't there on people's account anymore. And I think, because if you've got pronouns, I'm not following you.
Yeah, 100%. Sir Bob Geldof got in trouble for that, didn't he? Just during the week.
Because he thinks Sam Smith is a man. Good Lord. How would you think that?
Oh, no. So, so Janet, you're in New South Wales and Nerissa, you're in Queensland. Who'd like to go first in telling me what's happening in your state?
I think Nerissa
Janet.
I'm happy.
I can go.
All right. Well, I have a little list here. First, I want to say that I attended the live stream of Brett's funeral this morning, and I just want to send love to his sister and his mum and dad. And we're all gutted. It was one of the most beautiful funerals I've been to. Actually, it was very moving and very beautiful. And I don't have a suffragette scarf like Brett, but I do have beads in relevant colours. So that's why I've got these on today. So we love you, Brett. So our three kind of pieces of news from New South Wales are that we have World Pride and we also have Alex Greenwich MP putting up his equality bill, because we're all about the weasel words, right, in this bullshit game. And there's also an anti-conversion therapy bill, which, of course, as we know, cements the conversion therapy of young lesbian, gay and bisexual people into law. Now, I'm just going to share my screen and show you all the equality bill. It's disappeared from my view. Hold on, I will just get that up while I...
So, Janet, this is the omnibus?
Talking.
Is it the same?
Yes, we have an omnibus bill, which is the new equality bill, and we have the ban LGBTQ plus conversion bill. So we've got the two of those happening. Here we go. Let's look at this. So you can see he's claiming that we still have a bunch of discrimination towards LGBTQI plus people. Well, I don't know who the LGBTQ, sorry, there's a noise outside. I will just deal with that. We're live, people. Yeah, so he's claiming that there is this discrimination, but I can't work out who the discrimination is against, because as far as I can see, LGBT people have all of the stuff that they could use, but the TIQA plus, like, who even are those people? So somehow this grab bag is same-sex attracted people, largely straight men, but also lesbians experiencing internalized lesbophobia. And then we've got the Q, and I don't even know what that is. The asexual, like, what the hell even? I don't have sex, I'm being discriminated against. Plus. So who's the plus? Is that the paedophiles?
Yeah, so, probably.
Yeah. So he plans to incorporate in the One Bill legislation to ensure access to gender-affirming state documentation. Okay, great. So you can already get your fake papers from the government now, where you can pretend that you're the opposite sex. So I don't know what that means. Perhaps it means without the little hoops you have to jump through to get there. So just, declare yourself in the marketplace, and then voila, you are magically a woman. Model for consent in medical procedures on people with intersex variations. Well, they keep dragging this up, and I am not across what the rates of surgery on newborns with DSDs, could we use the term that is preferred, please, might be. But the fact that surgery was traditionally performed not long after birth, because people are so discomforted by the notion that you can't tell what sex your child is, rather than simply allowing your child to develop in their state of difference. So I don't know, like, newborns can't sign anyway. So, like, how many of these surgeries are still being done? Or is this like the conversion therapy, where they're claiming that it's all of this conversion therapy, but there really isn't? So this one really has me stumped. A removal of targeted discrimination, including in schools.
Yeah.
What is that? What is he referring to?
I think it's
very broad.
I think because religious schools can still discriminate and still refuse male students from going in female toilets, for example. They're exempt from a lot of the new legislation. They're trying to force the religious schools on board as well.
Well, that will be interesting, because you might remember, I think it was last year, there was a Catholic encyclical saying we won't pretend that kids are the opposite sex in our schools. So it will be interesting to see those things come up against each other. Not that there's a conflict of rights here at all, right? It's all just perfectly reasonable. And ban conversion practices, again, in addition to any other important reforms that arise during consultation. Well, this is a grab bag, right? I'd like to reform how we run public transport. Perhaps we could pop that in as well. Because LGBTIQA plus people also use buses. So that would be nice.
Hey, don't discriminate against trains.
Oh, sorry. So he's hoping to modernise New South Wales laws and provide full equality for a grab bag of people that we can't actually define. So, yay, right?
We know that they're men. We already know they're men.
We know they're men.
Majority men.
The majority of them.
There's whispers about hate speech legislation coming first to Victoria, which he may also be trying to bring in.
Yeah, we already have anti-vilification laws here that privilege gender identity, because they don't protect women. They don't protect against abuse because of sex. I can say fucking T word to a person and they can take me to the tribunal for having vilified them, but they can call me a fucking TERF and suck it up, sister. Not binary sibling, because that's totally fine and I'm not protected against that. So that's kind of frightening stuff. Now, the other bill that we have up at the moment is one of those pretend conversion therapy things. So there we go. And there's names to watch out for. Shane Mallard, Penny Sharp from the Labor Party, who used to be a fantastic advocate for women, and Jenny Leong, who has never been a fantastic advocate for women and has always been all about trans rights, whatever that means. Her electorate's in Newtown, which is like queer central. So, yeah, it's emotionally and psychologically damaging and has lifelong impacts. Yes, absolutely it does. When you try to convert somebody from the wrong sexuality. And, I'm old enough to remember friends who experienced this through the 50s, 60s, 70s in New South Wales. And it was horrific and it led to suicide. But as we know, what they're actually doing is making sure that nobody ever says to a traumatized 15-year-old girl, should we talk about your trauma? Rather than, let's prescribe testosterone for you on the PBS. So these are things to watch out for. We will not get the chance to comment, really. There won't be a consultation because there's never a consultation because that's mean.
Although I noticed at the bottom of this, if you or anyone you know would like to share personal experience, please email. So I urge everyone to go to his website and send him an email.
Send him an email about it. You can also sign up for updates on the omnibus bill as well, which, of course, in case we didn't make it clear, is the self-ID bill that's coming. So, these things are pretty frightening, actually. We have yet to see the fallout of how far this is going to go in Victoria. But given the possibilities for fines and even prison time, it's really alarming. And I just don't know quite what mechanisms you employ to pull back from having done this kind of stuff legislatively. So that's kind of it. Other than to say, I was in Sydney yesterday and the anti-progress flag is emblazoned on everything from buildings to the tops of ferries. It's on trains. There are stickers on the inside of the trains saying, you can ride with me and ride with pride. So I took pride in being on a train yesterday because apparently that's really exciting or some shit. But like even all the corporate, CBD Sydney, glitzy corporate, massive companies, all emblazoned with rainbows with that nasty little triangle thing in the corner that just makes me think of Dad's Army, if you're old enough to remember Dad's Army.
That's my dad's mobile phone ringtone.
Oh, well, good on you, Dad.
I just think the one good thing about this is that there's no denying that with every corporation on board, this is not a vulnerable minority. I think people are beginning to wake up to that these are the most, amplified supposed minority group that there is.
It's curious. Like there is significant cognitive dissonance about this, but this is exactly the cognitive dissonance that we have about the role of men generally in society, right? So this is just a transfer of that. So we can show, for instance, that men murder a woman a week in a relationship setting in Australia. But the minute you talk about that, everybody's like, oh no, bitches be deserving it because provocation and men kill each other too at a rate of knots, greater even than at the rate that they kill women. But if you talk about it, everybody knows the one exception or the one woman. And so the cognitive dissonance around it is so huge. So yes, we can see that everything from AMP to not the Harbour Bridge, fortunately, I was glad to see that, But the Opera House was emblazoned with it at the start of World Pride.
Well, of course, with Clover in charge.
Exactly. So we can see all of that, but because the cognitive dissonance is so profound, the fact that it still says on the ABC, oh, this poor minority in every single article that we write, people are still buying it. I don't know how much longer that's going to go on. And I think it will, the corporates at some point will get sick of it and just move on to something else. It's been great. They've been able to move away from the fact that they're poisoning the environment to pretending that they care all about the poor trans people. So it's been an absolute boon for corporations. They might get bored with it at some point, and then at least we won't have to see that shit all over our streets. Anyway, over to you, Nerissa.
Okay. Yes, we were saying before, Ange and I, yes, this is so depressing, this shit. Yet we go on. So yeah, in Queensland where I am, we, as Ange mentioned, we've had Tickle versus Giggle heard in federal court, which was actually in Sydney, the court. But yeah, this is this dude who we all know, who thinks he's a woman, has papers to say the same, means nothing, but he obviously thinks it does, and wants to chat online to females on the Giggle app, which is Sal Grover's app for women, for females. So he's taking Sal to court and Giggle to court for discrimination, and he didn't lodge it in time or something, so it looked like it wasn't going to happen, and now he has got a hearing. It looks like it's going to move forward, which is kind of good, because we need something like this, a test case, to tell us or to show us what's happening. Are we going to keep going down this path, and is it going to be embedded even further, this nonsense, or is common sense going to prevail, and are women going to be recognised as female, adult human females, not men who identify as women? And we're going to start getting back some of our rights, because the anti-discrimination legislation that he's going to use is clearly unconstitutional and just totally undermines women's sex-based rights. So it's going to have ramifications nationwide, potentially further afield than that. So yeah, we're all cheering on from the sidelines and watching to see what happens next. I think it's been adjourned until April. And we've also...
Sorry, did you see everyone's been using Grover from Sesame Street as their profile pics on Twitter to show support for Sal Grover?
Yeah, it's great.
It's not more about Grover. Yeah, there's so many Grovers out there now. I'm like, who's that? But there's really a lot of support for Sal out there, which is great.
100%. It's just astounding that this is where we're at. Like, I logged into the live stream to watch the hearing, the public hearing, and just Roxy Tickle did appear on the screen for a moment, and it's just like, how can you sit there and pretend to be a woman and think that you are entitled to access any and all female-only spaces? Like, the male entitlement is just insane. Anyway, hopefully we have a positive outcome. Meantime, we're waiting for the report from the Legal Affairs and Safety Committee with regards to the Parliamentary Committee on the Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Bill 2022, which our good mate Shannon Fentiman introduced final day of sitting of Parliament in December, and many of us wrote submissions for, and some of us spoke at the oral hearings as well, submissions in Brisbane. So Sal Grover was there, Rachel Wong from Women's Forum Australia, and also Kat Kariner from LGB Alliance Australasia, I think was who she was representing, and they all did an amazing job. So going by the government website, they're supposed to publish their report today. It's now 2:15 Queensland time, and there's still nothing there. So we're just waiting. We don't know what to expect. We are hopeful. This is with regards to the self-ID legislation that they're trying to push through here. Highly likely, like you said, Ange, that it'll just follow the same path as Victoria, which is what it's modelled on. It's also modelled on Scotland's absolute train wreck of legislation, which, as we know, good riddance to Nicola Sturgeon. It was a wonderful morning when we heard that she'd resigned. And I don't know what that means for the self-ID laws they're trying to push through in Scotland. But we all mentioned it in our submissions that look at what's happening in Scotland. How can the Queensland government ignore this? So it'll be interesting, and it's also terrifying to see what they recommend. Mm. And then we've also got the International Women's Day conference and rally for 2023 coming up next week. How is that possible? It's March.
That's quick. Yeah.
May. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be amazing to see.
I can't be there. Oh, I went last year and I can't make it. So, yeah.
I remember you being there last year. Yeah. Well, we'll see you next year. Or you can, look on the live stream on the IWD Facebook page, IWD Brisbane Meanjin. Maybe we can just tag that in the comments of the YouTube video, or you can watch the IWD Brisbane Meanjin YouTube channel after, when they'll be uploaded, all the videos of all the good women speaking.
Yeah. And you're both speaking, aren't you?
Yes.
Indeed.
And what are you speaking about?
Nerissa,
our rage.
Maintaining the rage.
Yeah. So I'll be talking a lot about the recommendations that come from the Parliamentary Committee report. So by then I'll have hopefully got my head around it, and I'll talk a lot about that, and just about what happened in Scotland, and Shannon Fentiman, the fact this is the Minister for Women in Queensland, and also our Attorney General, also Minister on Domestic Violence. And we are calling on her resignation, the same as Nicola Sturgeon. Rachel Wong from Women's Forum Australia has a petition that has now reached over 7,000 signatories. So if you haven't already signed that, please just Google Self-ID Queensland or go to Women's Forum Australia's website, and you can sign that petition as well. And I just lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, the week after in Queensland, we've also got Posey Parker, aka Kelly J. Keenan, Kelly J. Keen, going to be in Brisbane. So that's the following week. So that's the weekend of the 12th of March. So that's going to be huge as well.
We have Posey on the 11th of March in Sydney.
Huge time.
So it's going to be a big couple of weeks. I'm speaking at the conference about what does it really mean to work with, because we're often criticised, since many of us are of the left originally, before the left went nuts, we're often criticised for somehow becoming mouthpieces for the right because we won't pretend that sex isn't real. Not getting the connection, but I don't think humans can change sex. So there's obviously a lot of connections there I'm not getting. So I'm going to talk about don't get scared now, because I'm actually quite entertaining, the wealth of theoretical material around what it means when you have a coalition or an alliance or all the other various forms of that, because I feel like what I came to from researching this was that when I understood the various ways that you could get Group A, who believes X, Y, Z, and Group B, who believe A, B, C, but they also believe HJ thing in the middle, HIJ in the middle, and so they're going to work on that together, right? Nobody's giving up X, Y, Z or A, B, C. We're just working on HIJ in the middle, and that's going to be fine. So I also want to talk about holding our feelings around other women's activism lightly, to ourselves or constructively, because I'm not a let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya, let's all pretend difference doesn't exist. Difference exists. This is why women's liberation is vibrant and robust, because difference exists, and we shouldn't be scared of it. But let's not shit on our sisters because they choose a different path of activism. This is potentially the biggest threat that we have all faced in the 20th century about women's rights, right? And if I was one of the parents whose children was lining up to be sterilised and mutilated, I would talk to anybody. I totally understand that. I get why people go and talk to Mark Latham.
Yeah.
I think Mark Latham is an appalling person and a terrible politician. But there are so few politicians with the courage to speak up about this stuff. And if I was terrified about what was going to happen to my child, I would go and talk to Mark Latham. So let's not judge people for making these strategic decisions. Let's just stick in our own lane and do our stuff and hope that eventually we reach a critical mass of everybody doing everything that reverses these really harmful things that are happening in society. So that's what I'm going to talk about, even slightly longer than that little intro.
That's fantastic. We just don't have time for infighting. We really don't.
No.
You know, this is a threat, because people say, oh no, you know, threats to abortion is the biggest threat facing women.
Abortion is legal everywhere in Australia.
And how do you think these laws get overturned? If you give men the right to make decisions on our behalf by claiming that they're women, is the easiest way to get our rights overturned. So,
well, in New South Wales, we have the Woman Free Abortion Bill, and, you know, South Australia followed suit. So this is Alex Greenwich's work. He's not only removed women from the public discourse by taking us out of the only law that solely applies to us, but he's now working on this omnibus bill that will just erase us completely from public life.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very telling when we know that homophobia, transphobia and such are illegal under anti-discrimination legislation, yet misogyny, nowhere to be seen.
Misogyny flourishes.
Hey, I'm going to have to run, Ange, because my little one's just woken up.
Oh.
Well, it was great
and
to
it's her
see
birthday tomorrow. Lovely to see you too, Janet.
Oh,
how
well,
exciting.
Birthday love to you, Mum.
Yeah. Thank you so much for popping in when you've got a little one to look after. I know how hard that is.
Yeah.
And
I'll see you next weekend.
Yes,
Can't
and I'm
wait.
looking forward to seeing you on the live stream.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye, good women.
See ya.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, I appeared in a podcast this week. I was on the other side of the microphone, the New Flesh podcast. And I was really chuffed to be asked, because I actually listened to them because they have some rather interesting characters. They're only a couple of young Australian blokes who, you know, try and platform people who have, who, you know, sort of more, who are being cancelled basically, or people who have views that will lead to them being cancelled. And they usually, you know, platform people who are like academics and more cerebral than I am. So I was chuffed to be asked to be on there. But I think it was a good opportunity for, you know, people who watch this channel, for example, to learn a little bit about my background and what brought me to the place where I have this zany amateurish YouTube channel, and, you know, a few followers on Twitter. So yeah, I just thought, you know, if you'd like to have a listen, it'd be good. And I hope I did our side justice, because it's only the second time I've actually been asked to tell my side of the story. So yeah, if you have a listen to that, that'd be great. Yeah. So have you got any news? I'm excited because Kelly J is coming out to Melbourne on the 18th of March, and you know, the organising for that's, you know, going ahead at a crazy rate, and we're all ready. And we, from what we hear, there are going to be hundreds of people coming to this event, and I'm really excited.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so it's, like I said last week, it's still a little sad that someone's got to come out from the UK for us to have a voice in this country, but maybe this will be the thing that forces, you know, those that are trying to silence us to actually open up the narrative just a little bit.
Well, we do have you know, Speakers Corner events in Australia.
Yeah.
In Melbourne and Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney. And then, well, actually, yes, in Brisbane as well. I've seen footage from up there of women just standing up and speaking. So, you know, if you don't get to those events, get to this one and just stand up and speak. Just say your piece.
Yeah, and hopefully the flow-on effect from Kelly J's tour is that women come to the other speaker events that are on.
That'd be great.
Because there's a lot of fear out there that, you might get doxxed or you might get attacked by trans activists. You're not going to get attacked because the police will be there. And those fears are real, but they're also very unlikely.
Yes.
And people really need to come out.
It's the fear that keeps women in check at all times with feminism, whether that's fear is a fruit fly that keeps going past. It's making me laugh. Fear of men's direct violence or fear of men's indirect violence or fear of losing your friendship circle, which is very real fear for women I know who are very closeted about their view that sex is real, because their friends have all converted to the new cult and they know they'll be shunned. It's scary to contemplate, but it's good out here in reality land where you can say what you think at all times and to hell with everybody. So I encourage you to join us out here in reality land. It's good.
It is. It's great. It's really great. Well, on that positive note, I hope we've done Brett justice in this episode.
Too.
Oh, goodness me. If everyone could support this channel by liking, sharing, subscribing, and maybe even becoming a patron at $3 a month, that would be great. That goes directly towards direct action and activism. So that would be fantastic. And please tune in to IWD Brisbane and you'll see Janet and you'll see a lot of wonderful women speaking. And have a great week and we'll catch you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks, Janet. Bye.
Bye.